Annie, Anirudh, Charlie, Karen, Emma. Philip was not able to join us, but we also have Anthony with us. And to moderate the panel, I would like to invite Rishikesh. And Rishikesh, over to you.
Hi
Uh,
guys, thank you so much for making the time to come and be part of the panel discussion. I would like to quickly introduce Ani. Ani is a Manchester-based polymath whose career spans across technology, entrepreneurship, and performing arts. One of the rare guys who is part of the theater community as well as the technology community. Ani also is a co-founder of Tech India Advocates and champions Indian tech global stage, especially the UK-India corridor. I would like to also now introduce Charlie. Charlie is the founder and chairman of Cinest Incubator, an Ireland-based e-commerce incubator with growing international footprint. They have started doing programs across Dubai, Cyprus, South Africa, Morocco, and the UK. Uh, thank you, Charlie, for making the time out here. Next is Karen. Karen is a lawyer, solicitor based out of London, a champion in women in business and entrepreneurial freedom. She's been a socialist, commercially minded team, and has worked very closely with multiple founders to help navigate complexity. Uh, the next I would like to call upon is Emma. Emma is a management consulting investor, author, speaker, entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience across technology and strategy. She is based out of US. She has been a partner with E&Y and a managing director at Accenture. They've also built a patented product called Orion Score, which is around scoring of startups. So they built an AI-based engine to score the startups. She's also part of a couple of accelerators, etc. And last but not the least, I would like to call upon Anthony. Anthony is again an ex-KPMG, is currently the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Evo. It's a platform for helping people buy EV cars. So they are more in the knowledge driven economy of trying to explain what are the various models available, what are the various do's and don'ts around EV. So thank you to the esteemed panel to taking the time out. The objective of the panel is pretty simple. Yesterday we spoke about the emerging markets. Today we will speak about the developed markets. Uh, uh, in the developed market, the idea is how is the capital flowing? How are the customer demand trends changing? How are the emerging innovation hubs coming up? Those are some of the questions that we would be talking about. Maybe we'll start off with Emma. She's based out of US, so she's the only person in US. The other four are all in UK. So we'll start off with Emma. Emma, how do you see the developed markets evolving, right? Especially with the advent of AI and deep tech, how is that being taken up in the developed world?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hello, distinguished panelists with me. And thank you, Rishikesh, for making this possible for us to share our insights. I'm extremely active in the investment space in multiple roles as an angel investor. I have to say, as a super angel investor, and also as a venture capital. So I invest all the way from early stage companies, from pre-seed to pre-IPO, which is secondaries. Why I actually specifically started with this comment that I invest in everything from start to finish, pre-IPO and why secondaries. So that is a major shift in how investors invest in the US in the past 2 years. Not earlier, it's 2 years. So AI perspective was not only it creates faster growth or much quicker exits, it actually created a really interesting shift in the companies that in the past 4 or 5 years, they were not going IPO. So it created this secondary market to boom. So investors, including angel investors, there is that major shift that they are investing in secondaries. Why? Because of the slowness of going to IPO. Now everybody is pushing, especially the big investors, the top 15 ventures that put millions of dollars in companies to go to exit, but then for different geopolitical war or some other, even the AI reasons, the IPOs got on hold. So there is this boom that's going on with secondaries because everybody is expecting to have more IPOs go live, more acquisitions do happen. And AI is helping with that because it actually showcases the much faster growth and the exits with technologies that not only investors are interested, but the government. So where are we investing? Those are the major industries that have been impacted dramatically in the past 2 years. I started to invest, and many others with me, VCs and family offices as well, in energy, defense. Defense is very big, only because not just to be making money, but also to have a say what happens to that money in the defense industry. And I think the push is something very interesting to take away. When I invest, my first question is in any defense or energy companies. How is it going to support not only the war preparation defense, but the commercial? So we are pushing all these defense solutions to go dual, commercial and defense. So this is a big change, by the way. Family offices would never invest in defense, but now they understood they have to have a voice in it because we have to control somehow, but you can do it only when you invest. So there is this a big change. I'll probably answer some other questions, but I wanted to give you this very different perspective on how investors invest today. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for this insight in terms of the changing landscape of where the investment is going, when it comes to US. Moving across the ocean to Charlie. Charlie, you run an incubator accelerator focused around e-commerce, and you have grown it across multiple countries now, right? Uh, how do you see the opportunities and the landscape shifting across countries from an e-commerce standpoint?
Yeah, well, thank you, Rishikesh, for having me on the panel, and to everybody, it's a real pleasure to be here. Yeah, so my focus is 100% focused around the e-commerce. So our incubator is targeted uniquely, I think, at the e-commerce market and how we invest in businesses. Now, just to compare ourselves with the American market, investment is very different here. A lot of the, and I'm going to talk about startups for a minute in a developed world like we live here in Ireland or in the UK. You know, a lot of it is, yes, you start off, if you have a good idea, you would go down the government route. There are schemes that you can follow, and then you'd look for private funds, whether it be pre-seed, seed, family, and so on, banks and so on. But the market is very different than the US market. I look at the way that money is investing right now, and smart capital that's being invested in e-commerce is really to improve the margin per order and not just the top line growth. So here in the UK and Ireland, we are looking at a much more investable outline of how businesses can get their return, and they can only do that by increasing that margin. Dubai is a very developed market. When we opened the incubator in Dubai, I mean, deliveries are on another scale. I mean, we thought we had it right in the UK and Ireland, but deliveries, I mean, you can get things delivered by noon within 15 minutes of an order. That takes that to the next level. It opens the door for learning actually in the European market. I mean, the European market can learn loads from the Dubai market. When we look at Cyprus is stepping back into the European model. Our partner in Cyprus has not really got, they haven't got a strong developed e-commerce model there. So that's where we're really investing in the e-commerce side of making sure that people can evaluate the needs for e-commerce and then use the logistics that they have at hand. South Africa and Morocco, again, completely different markets to Dubai. I think there's so much learning from the Dubai market that can be then accelerated out. And it's amazing because it's happened so quickly. But I do think from an investor's point of view, it makes sense for when they are looking at businesses that are looking to scale, that they look to scale internationally within 2 to 3 years. They're not just keeping within their home market. Getting to the home market base is important, growing it into the UK, but then looking at markets like the UAE, Saudi, and so on. It's a massive push, and that's where the money is right now. And that's what the investors are looking for. They're looking at how the market can be expanded, and how quickly can they get to that market, and how quickly can they push in and make some, make an opening for themselves there.
Thanks a lot, Charlie, for the insightful thoughts around how even the e-commerce business is working very differently based on the market, and how people need to tweak their business models internally. Coming to Ani, one of the key things that you are also doing is helping the India-UK corridor, right? Coming from a tech background, moving into the performing arts. So how do you see this 2x2 matrix of a very tech-oriented stuff versus a performing arts, an entertainment kind of a thing, versus developed and a developing market or an emerging market like India?
Wow, thank you. You sort of given me a loaded barrel with tech and creative. Okay, so yes, I do specialize in cross-pollinating between tech industry and the creative industry. And you mentioned about theater. It's not just theater, it is all aspects of creative industry, cinema, music, opera, even the new creator, social media economy. I'll answer your question in two parts, because this specific session is on developed economies, and I'll probably do that first, where I see the differentiation, and then come to the cross-pollination part. It always interests me when someone talks about the developed market, as to where do you differentiate, because the other side of it is non-developed, which is not the case. Hence, we call it emerging, markets, which actually are not underdeveloped or emerging. They're overexploited countries, but we'll not go there. That's the part of history domain. In terms of developed economies, one difference are developed markets. One difference that I see, especially in the India-UK corridor, where the developed markets differ, they're very good at policy frameworks. See, there is no ownership of ideas. Anyone can have an idea across the world. Where developed markets differ is defining the policy and frameworks for long-term value. That's something that I have seen in my 20 plus years in the UK, that it's always sort of as much possible future proof. It's not an immediate spike or excitement of an idea, but how do you sustain it over a period of time? This is something I always see in India UK corridor. Founders from India, because I had a lot of founders come over to UK and find their feet and settle and grow here, they find it hard because some of them are exposed to US, and doing business in US sometimes is very easy. I mean, I'm a big fan of Silicon Valley culture, where within 5 to 10 minutes you can have a yes or no answer. Where in developed countries like UK kind of market or European market, it can take longer time, because the focus is on future proofing and more on policy. So one has to spend a lot of time understanding and aligning to the cultural dynamics. That's number one. Number two, coming to the creative industries and the tech. I guess this is one of the most under-tapped area, because I think the next frontier, as far as the India-UK relationship I'm seeing, is going to be the orange economy or the creative industries economy. Because when you talk of tech, we go after the usual suspect, the fintech, health, or now AI everywhere. The untapped domain always remains the creative industries. Especially, we forget now that let me just take one example. I recently asked in one of the similar panels a question that how many screens do UK has to distribute cinema. Compared to 70 million population, we have 4,500 screens. Now cut to India. India has 1.4 billion population. How many screens India has? And you will be surprised with the answer. It's only 10,000 screens. However, tring, that's also a wrong answer. India also has about 1 billion screens, right? Because of the penetration of smartphones as well as the world's cheapest data, right? So you have a potential to reach about 1 billion mobile addict customers who can consume creative content. So why are you not building it? Why are you not selling your products? Why are you not taking advantage of that particular route that's made available? So my passion is really to convert as many technologists and as many people who are interested in venture, building ventures, to also shift their focus into the creative industries. Investing, not just for entertainment, but because it's a sound investment, because it's a frontier that not many people will pay attention to, and you have bigger markets available. Today's, even if you take younger generation, they are a mobile first generation. And what do they consume? They consume creative content. So that is one of the biggest in investment area where I think both developed and emerging markets can come together. Does that answer your question, or I segued too much into different things?
No, I think you touched upon some of those things, and this is obviously not a question answer. It is more about
Yeah,
trying
discussion.
to
Yeah.
understand the various nuances that are across borders. Coming to Anthony, Anthony, you have done a lot of business across the European countries right now, which is from a certain standpoint considered developed as a whole market. But Ani was talking about the cultural differences. What kind of cultural differences do you see even within the developed market across UK and Europe?
Yeah, I think the some of the cultural differences is like the brands, certain countries, preference their own home markets brands. For example, if you look in the automotive industry, France or Germany, might focus more on the homegrown products. The UK is a bit different. But yeah, the culture from from a e-commerce point of view, it can be different, particularly with the dynamics of the younger generation coming along and the TikTok generation of attention and such like. So yeah, so I think from a attention point of view, I think there's a gap there from this decision fatigue. I think there's a market there to handhold people and reduce that decision fatigue in that different in the in that current market, and then include the trust as well. So there's a lot of the biggest shifts that I see is trying to move away from there's too much information and lack of trust, and there's a platforms that can be built that can overcome that. That's what we're trying to do with the Avivo platform, is trying to build that trust. Also, going back to the media that you mentioned earlier, and having like a media first approach is to have a lot of the human in the loop to give that trust first. Produce the content, and then drive the traffic and build the trust over time. Back down to the product, and reduce the decision points. All in one platform. So yeah, that's our goal, is to build build the engagement in each country, and build the trust and decision points. And yeah, some of the things like in the UK and in Europe, in the telco industry, which you mentioned earlier, is quite important from a trust point of view. Like for example, in the mobile industry, some of the Chinese vendors have been taken out of the picture and replaced by trusted mobile operators. So yeah, going forward, potentially that could be an impact in the AI world as well. That's what I think, that it might come to a point that do we trust the AI, and how much hallucination and all this software built on top of different AI platforms that that can change their policy overnight. That's a risk, and yeah, so it does fall into those 2 points of trust and decision fatigue, to make sure that can build a platform that has all that built into it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anthony. So trust and decision fatigue. And also I'll
Yeah.
take the point that Ani was mentioning about long-term policy building. So coming to you, Karen, you've been a lawyer, a solicitor for many years now. And how do you see, the regulatory framework, the governance framework, policy making different, within UK to the larger European region, maybe across the continent to US and to the emerging markets? How do you see the difference and the impact of that on the business, on the venture capital and the investment side of it? Karen, you will have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we work mainly with the UK, but we have USA investors, and we work across border with Dubai as well. I think a lot of people complain about regulations and governments. We're quite frustrated here in the UK just how much is placed upon us. But actually, I think it gives provable trust. So a lot of people do enjoy investing and supporting businesses in the UK because of the governance and the regulations. What we're seeing at the moment, particularly with investors, is because the risk is more visible now with AI and the fast pace and growth. Investors are starting to say, well, we don't want to put our money in to test the market. We want you to already have traction. We want to make sure you've got the right legal framework and governance, that you're aware of the regulations. It used to be at one point you'd get angel investment and you would actually slowly move forward. And then when VC investment came in, that's when you would really look about your governance, the regulations, the framework. We're seeing it much earlier now. Even angels are saying, well, is your IP portfolio protected? Do you need to be regulated? Have you got your data protection terms set out? Do your articles, your cap table, your shareholders, is it all aligned? But we're seeing so much more movement now from the investors pushing back on where your governance is. So we're talking with regards to AI, particularly because that's the way the tech's gone at the moment. How do you mitigate risk? How do you protect the business for reputational harm, cybersecurity? Have you even got any kind of contingency plan, governance and crisis management plan? And it's interesting, we're finding a lot of companies are coming to us and saying, we're based in Dubai, we're based in other countries where there is no governance, there is no framework, there is no regulation. Can you get our company adaptable to this? Because obviously the regulations are coming in here in August, so we're all preparing for that. So it's an interesting time for us at the moment, because I think a lot of founders and SMEs have to do a lot more now to prepare themselves and be ready to impress investors, and investors are looking for more. So for us, we're very busy, which is good. The framework and governance gives more protection, but I think people sometimes push against it. And actually, for me, I think it's provable trust. So I work with startups, I work with scale-ups, I work with more mature businesses. A lot of them, sadly, this year relocated to Dubai. Some are actually now coming back. They're going to America for investment because it's a lot quicker. But it's interestingly how the compliance and the government in the UK and how they're pushing it is actually giving credibility to the companies. And I think this trust, this compliance is something that's still a selling feature here for us at the moment in the UK. And I know investors are really engaged in that with us. So that's something we're specializing in at the moment, getting all the governments and framework around making you investable as opposed to, helping you once you've got the investment.
Wonderful, Karen. I think that's a very interesting point, right? That you're mentioning, that it's not just about the business model, but also putting in place the regulatory framework which helps you become more investable. So I think that's a wonderful point, Karen. Moving back to Emma, Emma, a couple of points that I just wanted to discuss, right? So one was, how do you create the governance to make the entity, the asset as an investable asset? At the same time, US has always, over the last 20-25 years, grown with a very strong globalization in theme, with price arbitrage becoming the central competitive advantage that it was able to drive, right? But over the last few months, there has been a significant back and forth in terms of tariffs that the political regime has put in place. And how do you think that has impacted the US economy, the VC economy, and the institutions over there, when they have to work cross-border, they have to work with organizations outside the US, and suddenly such shocks come in, and that especially in relation to what Ani was saying of a long-term future proofing. That's how the Europe works. So while US and Europe are both considered developed world, but one has a lot more stable, stronger foundation, not surprises, whereas US is now seen as a very surprising kind of a political scenario. Your thoughts on that?
Thank you. I'm glad you are touching some topics that everybody globally may think that, wow, innovation is in trouble, investors are not going to invest, tariffs are going up, regulations are not in place for all these new technologies. Well, if by education, I'm an economist, so I'm actually looking at this from a strategic perspective, in making conclusions for the moment. But I think, as we all know, these new technologies or innovation is not only for today. They are the ones to build tomorrow. For that reason, I actually have very good news for all founders on the call. This kind of geopolitical issues, wars, tariffs, all of that may impact somehow today. But your concept is, what am I doing for tomorrow? Because your technologies, your innovation is growing today. So the better you understand how you are, from today perspective, how you build something that tomorrow will change the reality, then you have a big, big shot to get the investment. So to Karen's point, investability is not only how good my product is today and how I'm going to market. Prove it to me how you are going to change this, despite all of these tariff issues, because the tariffs are pricing, tariffs are touching the money. It's a purchasing power of the economy. How innovators will look into it, use all of these new technologies that actually not just reduce the cost, they add the value to their life, add value to customers. So the e-commerce investors or e-commerce people on the call, I think it's great opportunity for all these startups, especially in e-commerce. So you need to understand the problem today. So tariffs are today's problem. They may go away in a couple of years. So what are you doing? So you need to plan forward. So if you ask me, tariffs did not change my decision-making where to invest. I'm looking at the innovation that changes people's lives, from healthcare, from energy, from space, because I actually forgot to mention space tech. Space tech is big. I already invested in 3 companies in space tech. Why? Because it's possible. It was not possible 10, 15 years ago. Now we have, by the way, if you want to know more like what I'm talking about, I actually do blog, Arakelyan.com. Check my blogs about energy, about quantum, about space tech. I just did my posting about energy to showcase, like, yeah, these wars happening with the oil and everything. I have one good news for you. Oil is not for tomorrow. It's today's issue. So what are you doing as an innovator to actually see how you can look into these alternative technologies, and how are you going to fight against these terrorists, because your solution is taking care of it? As a matter of fact, I don't know if the person here is The robotics technology is amazing because that is changing the world with all this new way of thinking. It's a mindset change. Why do I have to do this? Same thing is for agentic AI. I hope I gave you my perspective that all of these are temporary small issues. Trust me, it's small because they're going to change anyway. That's part of the progress. You stick to your plan, and investors, you stick to your plan, because I have the money and they have the solution. By the way, I'm also a founder, so I'm both ways. Nothing should stop you to do what you're planning to do. Actually, get more excited because change is good.
Thank you so much, Emma, for the insight. So coming back to Charlie, Charlie, you are focused on e-commerce only businesses across multiple aspects, both the developed as well as the emerging market, right? So as an institution, how do you look at internal knowledge transfer? So every new company or every new initiative that you invest into, how do you take the learnings of the past, both from a tech standpoint and the market dynamic standpoint, to be able to support those organizations? At the same time, do you foresee some kind of a consolidation as things go, a couple of years down the line? Because, e-commerce itself is, is a certain way of, taking things up. And if you are able to consolidate across multiple markets, that may be a very unique way of, taking the leap forward. Charlie?
Yeah, so I think definitely, I mean, a couple of points I wanted to pick up on. One is definitely we've gone down that compliance route from day one. I think it's really important. So part of when businesses are chosen and they join the program, the 12-month program starts with the first 3 months is all about their compliance. It's looking at their IP. It's looking about their cap table there. It's looking at we have all those experts in house to do that, and we set that up from day one because we realized that when people are looking for funding, and it's absolutely right, they now want the setup to be absolutely right from day one. So I think that's really important. Going back to the point of the knowledge side, definitely markets, things change. I mean, we had COVID, we had all the explosion of e-commerce growth, and we look at when we look at e-commerce, we look at app commerce as well. So we have apps as well that are selling services and products, but we look at everything from a transactional point of view. We look at how the bar for online shopping was changed by Amazon. I mean, let's be honest. We expect the next day delivery, and it is now expected to be exceptional by default. So every e-commerce, doesn't matter what size of an organization they are, it is expected to have standards, and those standards are things like next day delivery, same day delivery if possible, effortless returns. Being able, especially in the fashion or consumer sector, to be able to return things. That idea of the omni-channel, web, mobile, marketplaces, in-house video, reviews, trust, like the gentleman over at Evivo, exactly the same. Trust is a real part of it. Transparency. So all of that needs to be built, and that is all part of it. One of the main problems when we're looking at the developed to, sort of the growth markets would be things like fragmented logistics is an issue, not having the big players out there, maybe returns infrastructure is not there. From the idea of how e-commerce will work, I completely will agree with you that there is going to be, and part of our incubator plan is that when businesses get to a certain size and they're scaling, then there's a massive push for collaboration. There's a massive push for consolidation, and there will be consolidation in markets. There will be, partnerships drawn up, and we push for that. We push for that joint venture. We push for that, the purchase of other brands or the merging of brands to be able to create a bigger entity that has the compatibility internationally and offers the same services. And I think that's part of the big scale program that we're trying to build. Our knowledge base that we have in-house, we have built a complete cloud-based management tool for the incubator programs. So every single location that opens has a management tool which is in the cloud and is able to manage everything from their mentor program to the educational platform that we've built, the ScienceTech Academy, to the investor relations. We have support from JP Morgan to be able to do that. So things like that, it's all part of building that knowledge base and having an area where they're in for the long journey. They're not in for the short journey. We're here to support them from pre-seed to seed, up into angel, and then on and beyond that. Whether it be, I mean, obviously we'd love to see an IPO at some point. IPO is not as easy as it is in America here in Europe, but yeah, look, that's the way we're looking at, and I think it's the only way you can develop this program long term.
Wonderful. Coming to one of the points that was mentioned, fleetingly, and I would like to, call upon Ani for that. One of the key differences between a developed and an emerging market has always been the developed market looking at it more like a do-it-yourself kind of a scenario, whereas in the emerging market, it has always been a push towards do it for me kind of a scenario because of the obvious price arbitrage that you have on the labor side of it, right? So maybe you are uniquely positioned to be on both sides and give your view on how does the UK Europe market differ significantly from the India UK corridor that you're trying to do.
See, I work with a lot of UK India founders, and I see them going through the same problem which I went through like probably 2 decades ago, because I couldn't adjust to do it yourself culture, because I completely come from do it for me kind of culture. I was born and raised in India, built companies, whatever. But what do you mean by after all this, I need to mow my lawn? Why can't I get somebody? What do you mean by I need to fix the light bulb or, plumbing thing? Why can't I get somebody for it? But that's how the societies are structured. And this is actually, you hit a very important point. When the founders from emerging market, when they come to developed world, they have to go through a re-education process because they think that they have reached from, let's say, ground floor to 10th floor, the 11th floor is going to be easy. No. 11th floor actually sits somewhere else in different building. You don't realize that. So there is a re-education they need to go through. Founders coming from emerging markets also are, especially if they're successful, they're very hungry for immediate growth because it quickly dwells into the selling cycles. It doesn't work that way. It takes time, because when you land into a developed market, which is, as I think Anthony was saying, trust-based, Charlie and Emma also touched upon it, that you don't know anyone, nobody knows you. So you have to really reinvent your identity once again in a different manner that is acceptable to the cultural nuances here. Because people who have solved problems, they are so enthusiastic about solving problems that it's almost like I have a hammer in hand, let me find a nail. No, you have to wait. So it takes a great deal of effort and time first to position yourself in market. I mean, something that I work with a lot of founders, that to build your thought leadership. One of the common problems I've seen with founders from emerging markets also is that they try to be, one sort of promise the world instead of focusing on something really sharp. It almost has come that, I mean, the common answer I hear, and I come from that world 30 years back, is that yes, we can do everything. No, there is no need to do everything. You focus your area. It's all right to build a one inch wide and 1 mile deep company that will have more traction if you come here, if you position yourself well in the market. Once you position yourself, you establish your thought leadership, then you find the right partners. People underestimate the importance of finding partners, in this entire selling cycle. You need to have the right partners when it comes to industry bodies, in terms of advisor, in terms of your product segment clubs, associations, the events that you need to be part of, the expositions, events like this you need to be part of. So you really need to find your partners. So position yourself first, then you find partners, and finally, then you start prospering or prospecting. People, normally founders try to jump the gun, you know. So even before they have built the runway, they have planned the entire ATC, they think that they will be able to land and fly planes. Doesn't happen that way. So I have two messages for founders coming from emerging markets to the developing world. Yes, you must come. Please sell, because once you have emerged, where will you go? You will come to the developed world to see. Please come and sell. No problem with that. Number two, take patience not as a quality, but patience as a strategy that pays in the long run. And be prepared to go into your entrepreneurship journey one more time. Because as you know, the classic, if I may allow to end on a quotable quote of a name of a book, that what got you here doesn't get you there. There's a big difference. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Ani. Thank you so much. And just to extend what you said, maybe this question is for both Emma and Anthony, right? What Ani was mentioning was about how should the founders in emerging market look at when they look at moving into the developed market. I would also like to ask, maybe we'll start off with Emma. Emma, you are part of the developed market VC investor economy, right? And you do work with a lot of founders, startups, and people going for IPO. Do you usually see them trying to go to the emerging markets because that's a much more faster growing economy, or are you comfortable with organizations that you've invested into being restricted to US and maybe go to UK or Europe, a few years later? How do you see the growth, for your portfolio companies?
Well, I'm going to start saying that I started to work with startups since 2011 because even at that time, corporations, right after the crisis, they saw so much innovation coming to market that the corporations started to pay attention. So we started to go after the innovators and startup categories since then. And throughout this time, the ones who had from day one a global perspective. Honestly, at this moment, it doesn't matter the location. It doesn't matter which location you are coming from. I don't pay attention to your location. I pay attention to your mindset. And mindset you can build now with all this information availability that we have. Before it wasn't available, now it is available. So I would say that startups from day one, you plan. I start here, wherever you are. It could be developed or it could be developing or emerging or not, or even a location nobody still knows. They consider them as an innovative geography. You plan how you're going to go global. And the way we do this, and I'm not just saying it and I'm not just giving an advice. So since 2020, we are running an accelerator. It's an accelerator, it's not an incubator. So we are talking to people who already have something to give to market, already have found some market fit. There is some revenue, but the more importantly, it's not how much money you make now, how much money you plan and you think you can. So it's the pipeline, it's your mindset of how you're gonna go to the globe. So I agree with Ani that there is a preparation of mindset. So don't start thinking about that I'm from a developing country, I don't know what I'm doing. That nobody has that perspective, especially experienced investors. VCs, they actually look at you as a team leader or as a team member. What is your mindset? Are you prepared to take your innovation to the world? Why? Because it's needed. It's absolutely the right time to have that solution into any society. So think about how global is your innovation. That's the key. And please don't make yourself feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough because I'm from this country or that country. Absolutely not. The world has changed. Maybe it was like that in 1900s. It's not that anymore because people have access to information. They can get educated. They can learn AI. They can do anything which was not available years ago. So today it's available. You're more empowered. You're blessed, by the way, with all of these challenges. Actually, challenge is also even good. So our accelerator, we take companies from all over the world. It's called BAJ Accelerator. I'll put it in the link. And startups are invited globally. We actually trained close to 200 companies and raised 109 million for those cohorts. And those are companies from 23 countries globally. And we invite everybody because we see a talent from almost in like an unknown place. You can come as a very prepared innovator, but you need to understand how to sell to Europe, how to sell to US. There is some language, so we teach that too. Plus, on top of it, we build a product that's called Orion Score. It scores your investability readiness. It tells you immediately where your weak points are and gives you a very quick update on how to get there. So location doesn't matter anymore. We're actually talking now about space. We are talking about space tech almost every day. So you are more ready than you think, but you need to prepare, and I agree with Ani. You need to be aware of what is the value proposition formula for different regions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Emma, for your insight. Coming back to Anthony. Anthony, you have built a knowledge kind of a platform to help people take up sustainable solutions, especially on the EV vehicle side of it. And how do you see yourself scaling across multiple countries or multiple continents? Because you have a good combination of knowledge plus the tech e-commerce kind of a mechanism, right? To be able to drive
I think the way we scale is to as Anil said earlier, is to niche down. Once we niche down into the product and become the experts, become the expert in that field, and then we can build the distribution network, because the developed world, it's very noisy. In America and Europe, there's 250, 300 million people, and you need to be heard out there. So if we can niche down as much as possible, become the expert, and then go back to first principles. That's what we're trying to do on our platform, is go back, get the signals from first principles. So get the the learning feedback loop, directly from the users and from the data, rather than just AI, because as been said multiple times, anyone can spin up an AI tool now in a few days. Whether it's useful or not is something different, but if you can build that platform, to go back to the first principles and pull in that data, that's more of a moat to make your platform unique in your niche, and then like in our case, to build that distribution network to grow the sales, on the media side. So with the latest technologies, that's what we're doing. A lot of the agentic agents and the open clause to pull in all those I call them like first principle signals, which would be difficult to people to replicate. So then that can be rolled out in each country, that platform, in each company to each country to scale. That's the way that we see it growing, and especially with the AI now, like you get more and more useful, but potentially it's like 15 to 20% of what you get back from my AI can be hallucinations. So which is the good bit and which is the bad bit, no one really knows. So with this first principles feedback, that's our concept is to build, going back to the trust thing, and the is to build that trust by feeding in them raw signals rather than just relying on AI. Or we use AI to to run the engine, but also use media and people in the loop to educate people and push them to your platform. That's our plan to scale it, B2B out in each country. Be known for the expert, because anyone can build, like you said, a platform, it does everything all in one platform, which is easy to do, but it takes time and effort to niche down and be the expert and be trusted and have that continuous learning loop. So that's the way we see it going, with especially with, you can see, like with the open claw, people have spinning up their own agents, and it's learning, it becomes more and more useful every day as it learns the memory of how the people interact and what that person learns. That's the way we see it going forward, is becoming more and more personalized down to the business or to the individual.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anthony. Just coming back to Karen, so Anthony touched upon something which is the first principles. Now, if you go with your background of law, how do you go back to the first principle? So there is the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, right? And when you're working with founders, startups, larger companies, I'm sure there are always, conflicts in terms of what you believe would be the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And as a accomplished solicitor, how do you guide organizations in trying to balance that two out? Because a lot of times the letter of the law may go against the business, but the spirit of the law may be in line with what you want to do and what you want to do for your customers, and sometimes the vice versa. How do you look at that?
I suppose if we're talking about commerciality versus legal aspects, I think it's just understanding your business model. I mean, obviously, everyone has to make money. You have to be commercial, whether you're raising investment, exiting, or just actually scaling your business. You need to understand the governance, the compliance, the rules, particularly cross-border. So, for example, you could go and get a Dubai lawyer and a UK lawyer, but you also have to understand the cross-border issues. It's not as easy as running a business and having a group structure like you would have in the UK. You do have to understand the nuances of the different countries, the different cultures. For example, I'm only choosing Dubai because that's where we operate with a lot of our UK companies. The visas are very different. Paying for spouses and dependents medical healthcare is very different to the UK. There's a lot of cross-border issues that we see. So I think when you're setting up your business, a lot of the time the founders will look inside themselves for the commerciality, the team that's building it. They'll hopefully do the shareholder agreements, terms and conditions, do the investment round in the country they start. As you bring in investment from the USA, or if you set up in Dubai, it's really vital that you understand the local nuances and regulations and actually work out how that combines the two. I think that some of the difficulties is predominantly, a lot of the time, is tax. So a lot of people get tax advice in one country, but the jurisdictional cross-border issues do arise. So that's when the conflicts do arise a lot of times. So founders need to be investment ready. They need to go through the due diligence, and they need to obviously take in the investment, whether it's angel, whether it's VC, whether it's family. But as soon as they start moving into different jurisdictions, that's where I see the conflict arise. And I think culturally, we have a big difference in the UK, because America is very fast. Dubai is very face-to-face and personal. So there are some nuances. But I think very much in the UK now, I'm seeing founders wanting to move quickly and escalate their businesses because they're seeing, money coming from America fast. We're more of a bootstrapping. We want to see family and friends money in there. We want to see you test in the market before you explode into the new world and the new market. So founders are rushing. And a lot of the time, the tax, the legal, the compliance is not catching up. So that's where I think the conflict's arising. We're rushing which is great, but we need to keep up and make sure the compliance and the governance is there. We need to understand the cross-border jurisdictions. That's when a lot of the conflict arise, engaging your staff and your shareholders, making sure they're on the journey with you. So for me, it's more engagement, compliance, as well as being commercial. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So I think we are running out of time now. So what I would like to do is to close off the circle. I would like each one of you to, mention 2 words. One word in terms of what, according to you, defines doing business or raising funds for the investable startups in the developed markets, and one particular second word is more about how different is the developed world from the emerging market. So one caution and one what would you say they should definitely do and something that they should not do when it moves between developed and emerging markets. You can start off with Emma.
I'm gonna say not global as one word.
Sure, I mean it can be 2 words, not a problem.
Okay, so being not global, you may actually lose opportunities. So non-global, and for the opportunity is collaborating not only with partners, collaborating with other startups. You will be amazed how that collaboration takes you into the market. So be very open, not to compete all the time. There is a healthy competition. So that is the word is collaboration, but with startups and with partners and with investors. Thank you.
Wonderful. So think global and collaborate, if
Yes.
I were to summarize it. Wonderful,
Yes.
Emma. Ani, from your side?
To do is cultural alignment, a must do. And number 2, which comes with that, is don't be in a rush to sell. Invest time, effort, and money here before you actually start selling. That's the
Wonderful. So patience.
patience as a strategy.
Wonderful. Karen?
I would say build up credibility, and that's done by compliance. That's the positivity. And the negative is don't say you're going to fix it later or do it on the cheap for now, because that's fatal. So build up credibility, be compliant, but pay for it and do it right.
So build credibility and don't take shortcuts. Wonderful, Karen. Anthony? Anthony, you're on mute, so you'll have to just unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, I'd say be the niche expert in your domain for the developed, and then what not to do is make sure that you're solving the right problem. A lot of people don't solve, they solve the wrong problem, so make sure you're solving the right problem.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anthony. Last but not the least, Charlie, how do you see do's and don'ts?
Prepare to pivot as one word.
So adaptability.
Yeah, pivot, being able to adapt, yeah, and partnerships.
Wonderful.
Build partnerships. Yeah, it's really important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Charlie, Annie, Emma, Karen, and Anthony. Thank you so much for your time and valuable wisdom. I'm sure the audience has gained a lot with almost, I would say, almost 150, 200 years of experience among all of us. So I think that's amazing. Thank you so much. Hemant, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. We just gave our audience a small vocabulary to think about, those key words, those interesting words, which should spark again a lot of conversations. And I've said this again and again. Our objective is to spark some very meaningful conversation in the minds and between friends, between founders, between founder and investor, between investors themselves. So great. We come to the conclusion of our day, and a big thank you to